Should I take Social Security at 62 or tap into my retirement savings? Common question that comes up all the time. I want to address it with you here today. I want to give you 5 bullet points to consider as maybe you work through this decision point in your own situation. Now, this is a common question, and it's typical because a lot of times there's an income gap we're trying to solve for. For federal employees, that can be from 57 to 62 in a lot of cases, just based on how federal benefits work and the timing of them. But more commonly, for a lot of folks, it's 62 to 67. We're talking about claiming Social Security benefits, right? When is the right time to do that? We got this gap, we can fill that gap with Social Security, but we're not sure if it's the right decision. We're going to keep this simple, straightforward, keep it moving along. First thing on my list, we need to know what that income gap is going to be. So that involves creating your retirement income worksheet. We talk about this all the time. Fill that out. What do you have in terms of income sources? You got a pension. Let's look at Social Security and your investment portfolio, but we don't want to include those because we're trying to solve for what that gap is without those benefits. Then I want to look at what your expenses are. Need to get pretty granular about this. Fixed, discretionary. Don't forget to include taxes. Everything that you think you might be spending in retirement, we need to know what that is so we can solve for that gap. You add it up. If you've got a negative balance there, which you likely will, that's what we're trying to solve for, okay? Step 1, understanding exactly how much income we need to generate from a combination of Social Security and an investment portfolio. Number 2, I want to know what your age 62 Social Security benefit projects to be. Okay. We can also look at FRA and age 70, see how those benefits continue to roll up by delaying them. And then I want to know on a percentage basis, what does that gap, the income gap that we talked about in step 1, represent as a withdrawal from your investment portfolio? So what I mean by that, simply, let's say for the sake of our example in the video today, we're using a $2,500 income gap on a monthly basis. That's $30,000 a year. So if I take $30,000 a year, I got a $500,000 portfolio. I needed to generate that from the portfolio. That would be a 6% annual distribution. Okay, so that's a pretty high distribution rate. And when we're talking about creating income from a portfolio. Now, if you had a $750,000 portfolio, that 30 grand represents 4%, which is kind of in our target area. This plays a role in how much stress you're actually going to put on an investment portfolio by trying to make distributions from it, especially when we're talking about taking those distributions earlier in your retirement. Hopefully we're planning for, a 25, 30 year plus retirement. Those pieces of information are important to consider when thinking about where to take the money from, how to best solve this puzzle. Third thing on the list, don't overlook the hidden impact of taxes. Social Security benefits are taxable, at least the majority of them. At this point, it's 85% of Social Security benefits are taxable. Whether that changes with legislation a little bit, we'll see. But that's kind of what we're working with. And retirement income from a portfolio, it depends where it's coming from. If it's coming from a pre-tax portfolio, it's going to be taxed as ordinary income. If it's coming from a Roth, it could be tax-free. If it's coming from a taxable investment account, a portion of that may be taxable. So we have to figure that into the equation as well. And then down the road, thinking about distributions from pre-tax accounts. If your pre-tax accounts grow so large, it could generate a tax problem for you, but that would be a favorable thing. Kind of different topic. Number 4, let's talk about survivor benefits for a minute with Social Security. So if you're the primary breadwinner and your spouse hasn't worked or worked at a lower level and they haven't accumulated as much of a benefit from Social Security as you have, survivor benefits could play a key role here, especially if you predecease. And that's because typically your spouse will receive 100% whatever the benefit is you're receiving. So you can see by delaying from 62 to 67, that could benefit, a surviving spouse down the road. A key consideration, especially for one that might not have a strong Social Security track record of their own to fall back on. And then the last thing on the list, and we'll wrap this up. I said I was going to keep it short and sweet. The increases to Social Security that everyone talks about, so those 8% roll-ups on an annual basis, that's a guaranteed increase to an income stream. Versus the gains or the potential gains on an investment portfolio, they're not guaranteed. And that's just an increase to the portfolio value. So that goes back to step 2 when we're talking about what is the amount of your investment portfolio. If it's at par, right? So if it's $2,500 from Social Security rolling up at 8% and you've got that $750,000 portfolio rolling up at 8%, maybe the increases are relatively close to being the same if you kind of run it out. But if you've got a $500,000 portfolio making 8%, that's going to give you a smaller increase than the 8% roll up on your Social Security benefits. Now, the other thing too, you can't overlook this. With Social Security, part of that increase is just your delayed credits rolling up, right? So they're taking, if you wait until 63, they're just taking your 62 benefits, rolling them into the equation to give you the increase, right? So it's not just the credit of interest or gain that way. So there's some sort of opportunity cost that we're looking at as well. Like I said, it's different. It's not apples to apples when we're talking about, and it's really hard to kind of take investable money and try to make that comparison because there are no guarantees on that side of the equation. There's volatility, there's market risk. So comparing those two things can be a little tricky. But That's the point of this exercise, right? So with those 5 bullet points, to give you the context to kind of work through the equation and come to a decision point that you feel comfortable with. There's a lot to this. If you have questions, if you're facing a situation like this, would love to be a resource for you. So reach out. Remember, retirement planning, you don't have to do it alone. Leverage resources like myself and my team. We'd be happy to talk with you. So if you found some value here today, give us a like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.